everyone. First, I just want to welcome you to this virtual Overcoming Procrastination workshop. Before sharing my slides, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Rebecca Mattern, and I am one of the graduate assistants at Learning Services. So without further ado, I'm going to put our slides on the screen. So yes, as mentioned, today I'll be talking a little bit about overcoming procrastination. And like I said, we are Learning Services, and normally we're located in Sub 1 in the Counseling and Psychological Services office. There's our number, which you can still use to make an appointment, and you can also find us online at learningservices.gmu.edu. If you're interested, we also have a few social media platforms where we post announcements about our upcoming workshops, and then we also provide a bunch of tips and strategies related to learning. So definitely check that out. So at Learning Services, we offer workshops like this one that you can register for at mason360.gmu.edu. We also offer one-on-one academic coaching. And during our coaching sessions, you can sort of get that individualized help that you might be seeking. In our workshops, we give more of an overview of study strategies, but in the coaching sessions, we again do that one-on-one where we can look at your schedule, see where your strengths and difficulties are, and help you kind of come up with solutions for your academic difficulties. We also have some videos that we've recorded that you can find on our YouTube channel, Mason Learning Services, and we also have a virtual tutoring resource list, which is very helpful in these times of being isolated and not having access to tutoring in person. But if you're watching this in a future time, we also keep our in-person tutoring resource list there as well. So to schedule a one-on-one appointment, you can go to this website, tinyurl.com/masonlearning, and the type of appointment you would like to schedule is learning assistance. The office is Learning Services, and for an online appointment, it's online academic coaching, and then if we are in person, which we are not right now, you would just choose academic coaching. So that's a little bit about us. So without further ado, I'll let you know that for the next hour or so, we'll be talking about the consequences of procrastination, as well as factors that cause procrastination. And then we'll also end with some strategies to overcome procrastination. So what exactly is procrastination? When you hear that word, what comes to mind? Well, technically, procrastination is defined as the tendency to delay tasks that should be completed now in order to avoid the discomfort, or in the moment you feel discomfort and therefore you avoid the task. So before thinking about why this is a problem, I always like to show this little graphic, which I think is really helpful, and it helped me understand as a fellow procrastinator in undergrad. This helped me kind of understand why exactly we procrastinate, what exactly is happening when we procrastinate. So it's interesting because when you first, let's say you have a big assignment due at the end of the week, and thinking about it brings on a lot of stress, right? So if you look at this green line graph, in the beginning, that anxiety level that goes up, the stress goes up when you first think about it. So it feels uncomfortable, it feels stressful, it feels worrisome to think like, oh my gosh, I have this assignment, I don't know what to do, I don't know where to start. So you're nervous. And then to sort of ease that nervousness and that stress, we avoid it. We stop thinking about it, we do something else. We say, I'm not going to think about it until later today or later this week. And in the moment, if you see the green line goes down, your anxiety level goes down because in the moment you feel better. You're not thinking about it. You're not thinking about your stress anymore. And things seem dandy. But in the back of your mind, there's that knowledge that, okay, the assignment is still due and I still have to get to it. And then when it's time to start really having to think about it again, later that day or the next day, the anxiety level is actually higher the next time you think about it, because now you have even less time to get the work done, and you're closer to the deadline with maybe less opportunities to ask for help, and it just gets more stressful. So in short, it's, that we get nervous, which is normal, to stressed as an assignment comes up. Then we avoid the assignment, which leads to temporary, distraction, but then that anxiety ends up coming back harder the next time. So definitely a roller coaster of emotions. And instead of this, we want to kind of keep a more mid-level of anxiety that is a little more constant, in the sense that if you work on it a little bit every day, you might feel a little bit nervous, but then that anxiety drops when you've actually done something for it. And then you set a goal, you complete the goal, and then you give yourself time to relax at the end of the day. And then the next day you work on it a little bit more, and then you can relax. So it's more, when you plan ahead and when you get done more earlier, get more done earlier, then you are able to manage that anxiety a lot better. So some consequences of procrastination. I'm sure if you procrastinate, you're well aware of these, but it definitely, like I mentioned, causes stress. Whether the stress precedes the event, it still makes you more stressed as time goes on. It can lead to health problems due to that chronic stress and that chronic fatigue, and maybe staying up all night leads to lack of sleep, or stress eating. Lots of ways in which this sort of psychological stress can manifest in physical ways. Again, that loss of sleep, very detrimental. Lower grades too. If you give yourself less time to get the work done, the quality of your work might go down, which leads to lower grades. Or if you're studying for an exam, then you have less time to study for the exam, and therefore a lower chance of scoring high on the exam. And then lost opportunities. So if you miss a deadline for something, then you might lose the opportunity, unfortunately, which could then lead to career troubles, or looking bad for your supervisor or your boss, or having troubles with colleagues who are expecting you to get something done and you're waiting till the last minute. It can also lead to unnecessary expenses from things like late fees that come up when we leave things to the last minute, or if you have to ship something, for example, you have to pay a higher cost to ship it faster rather than if you had, shipped it ahead of time. And again, kind of going back to that career troubles, you might experience resentment from others who are on your team, and then it kind of destroys that teamwork if you're not doing what you've promised that you said you would do. So definitely this is more of a grim outlook, and I'm sure all of you are well aware of these consequences, but they're definitely the reason why, even if you think to yourself, oh, well, I've been procrastinating since high school, it's worked for me. Maybe it's worked for you in the sense that you're able to get things done, but at what cost? These are the costs of procrastination. Do you feel stressed? Do you lose trust from coworkers? Do you lose sleep? Could your grades be higher? Like, all of these things are reasons to maybe try to tackle your habit of procrastination a little bit. So I want you all to think, if you're watching this, of a reason for procrastination. So what are the kind of things that you say to yourself when you're procrastinating? When you're in that moment of, I should be doing this thing, but I'm going to do this other thing instead. What does that look like? What does it feel like to you? What's going on for you there? Because oftentimes it can look like this, where, you tell yourself everything's fine, you rationalize doing something else, but really there's more problems all around you, like this poor little dog. So speaking of rationalizations, there are a few reasons and rationalizations that people tend to use when they're procrastinating or about to procrastinate. And then I'll maybe talk through a few solutions. So if you tend to be ignorant, this is when it looks like, oh, I didn't know I was supposed to do that. I didn't realize that that was supposed to be due. If you're the type of person who do this, I think it's important to just remember to be prepared and to try to keep in contact with your colleagues. If you didn't know something was due, it means that maybe you're not as aware, or you haven't looked at your syllabus, or you haven't been paying attention to your group project. So always just trying to do the work ahead of time so that you're on track, you're organized, and you know it's coming up ahead of time. Skill deficiency, this is a big one. Not knowing how to do something, or feeling unprepared or lost, or just overwhelmed with the demands of a project. And this is a big one when, I would just say ask for help. Reach out to your professors, seek resources, look for resources in the university, outside of the university, talk to a classmate, try to ask for help. Like, you don't need to go about this alone, and that feeling of not knowing how to do it often stops us and makes us panic and not know where to go next. So trying to remind yourself that you don't need to know how to do it alone. You can ask for help and to help you get on the right track. Apathy, this is a big one I hear from students. Not wanting to do something. When you have low motivation, it's very easy to put something off because, in the moment you don't want to do it. You might think that it doesn't really make a difference if you put it off. No one cares whether I do this or not. Just having reasons to not want to do it. And I think with apathy, the biggest thing I try to think of is like, remember your motivation. Remember your reason why you want to graduate, why you want your degree, what are you wanting to learn. So remembering, trying to get back to that intrinsic motivation, your values, what you really want out of your course, and what's the kind of person you want to be. Do you want to be someone who does a good job, or who waits to the last minute? And I think remembering that internal motivation, without judging yourself or without shame, just thinking like, okay, I don't want to write this paper in the moment, but overall, I want to be someone who's a lifelong learner, or I'm really interested in this topic, and it's just that this assignment feels really overwhelming. What's a baby step I can do to start this assignment? Can I just do an overview of the research, or can I talk to a friend to brainstorm ideas? Just try not to get caught up or lost in that initial feeling of apathy. That's another big one. I need to be in the mood. I'm not. Yeah. So a lot of just reminding yourself, let's not wait for the right mood to come along. Let's try to get started. And I'll tell you a little secret about that in a moment. So fixed habits, a lot of people, like I said earlier, think to themselves, oh, I've been procrastinating since high school. It's the way I've done it. It's hard to change. I know I can pull this off at the last minute. I maybe work better under pressure. And the interesting thing about this is, procrastination, like any other habit, is something that can be learned or changed. And it's just a matter of practice. And initially, it might be difficult to kind of overcome that procrastination, but the more you make a habit of starting things earlier and breaking your assignments up, the better you'll get over time. Like, it'll take a good while to sort of start to fix it, but if you just get on the path and start to take little steps to change your behavior, you can do it. You really can. And then the other thing with working better under pressure, this one's always interesting to me because, yes, in a sense, like having a deadline definitely motivates people to start working because, as you come up to the deadline, you have a legitimate reason, a motivation to get started. So you might feel more motivated to work under pressure. You might start actually working when you're under pressure. However, you don't actually, usually, most people don't work better in the sense that their quality of work is better. When you wait to the last minute, you have less time and you're more stressed, so you're not thinking as clearly to create as good of work. So trying to, a way to sort of navigate this or mitigate this is to create deadlines, intermittent deadlines for yourself throughout the week or throughout the 2 weeks that you have, to complete your assignment. So you get that pressure of a deadline that you've created for yourself. So you still get that pressure, but you can also give your full attention and your full self to completing good work. So creating like intermittent deadlines, breaking up a big assignment into smaller sections, and then creating deadlines for yourself. Like, I want to have my draft written by this day. I want to have my outline written by this day. I want to finish my research by this day. Things like that. So inertia, this is like feeling like you just can't seem to get started, or, again, that just it just feels hard to just go forward. So for this, I talk about with students something called the 5-minute rule, and this is essentially saying, hey, I'm gonna just go sit at the computer for 5 minutes and give your full attention for 5 minutes. And if after the 5 minutes you don't want to work anymore, that's fine. You can get up and leave. And this I really like using. Oftentimes what I'll do as a student is I'll sit at my computer and I'll just take my 5 minutes to read the assignment. Sometimes I'll even like retype the assignment requirements. That's just a personal thing. But anything to get me in the zone of and curious about what the assignment's asking, instead of thinking about it as this sort of abstract thing I don't want to do. Just diving in and saying, okay, I'm just going to read the assignment, very low pressure. After 5 minutes, I can call it quits. But usually after 5 minutes, you get a little bit of momentum. So just figuring out a small thing you can dedicate yourself and see how you feel after that 5 minutes. So another rationalization is frail memory. So this is a little similar to that ignorance, but feeling like I just forgot, or oops, I totally didn't realize we were having to do it. And for that, I would say, you might have some issues with like time management or keeping track of your to-do list, of your assignments. And to that, I would say, like, you start using a planner or making to-do lists. Just write it down. Write down what you need to do in whatever format works for you, whether that's a digital planner or a paper planner. Yeah, whatever works. Set yourself reminders, put sticky notes on your mirror, whatever you need to do so that you don't forget. And then there's often physical problems. So in the moment, you could be sick or you could be feeling tired, and these are very legitimate. But I think as much as possible, trying to do preventative work to avoid these physical problems. If you're able to, eat a good diet, get your exercise, get enough sleep, so that you're setting yourself up for success. Because when you're tired or hungry or, fatigued, it's going to be harder to get that willpower to start. So as fresh and as, awake and alert as you can feel, the better, the easier it will be to get started. So just take care of yourself, self-care, manage your time so that you're splitting your work with rest and not having to like work all in one day to the point where you burn out and then you need a whole day to rest. Try to manage, split your time evenly. And then appropriate delays, these are that, oh, well, I'm just waiting for the best time to do it. I just need to be inspired. I need time to think this through. This other opportunity will never come again, so I can't pass it up. And to the first two reasons, I would say, recognize that maybe, I don't want to say that these are excuses, but just thinking like, do you really need more time, or are you actually working on it when you say that you're working on it? I think just trying to be honest with yourself and know that you need to get started, and what steps can you take to get started. And then if there is another opportunity that seems more appealing, trying to see if you can reschedule it, if it's a person or if it's a meeting, could it be recorded? Just trying to plan your time so that you don't get distracted by other things that come up, and instead you stick to your plan. Yeah. So if this was an in-person workshop, I would ask you to brainstorm some ways to overcome these, but I kind of gave you some ideas, and I think I invite you to try to see which of these rationalizations you tend to use, and then ask yourself, what strategies can you use to overcome those thoughts and those rationalizations? What could you tell yourself in the moment when you're procrastinating? What could you tell yourself to get over that, or to just start working anyway? Or preventatively, what can you do? So in short, procrastination has a lot to do with self-regulation. So when we procrastinate, we usually are choosing to do something that feels good in the moment. We scroll our phones, we maybe take a nap. Some people, or you could do what's called like productive procrastination, where you might answer emails or work with a colleague, where you feel like you're being productive, but it's not actually what's the highest priority thing to do in the moment. And it still is a form of procrastination. So if you do procrastinate, what the sort of habit or the mental muscle we want to build is learning how to delay gratification. And this sort of means, let me backtrack. I think I once learned a great tip about procrastination. And essentially, when you procrastinate, we all have, like I said, different activities, different habits that we do when we're procrastinating. So for example, I might clean and scroll my phone on Instagram and take a nap. So if you start to recognize what you actually do when you procrastinate, instead of having those be your avoidance behaviors, instead those switch them to be your rewards. So oftentimes if you're procrastinating, you're, let's say, scrolling social media, for example. If you're doing that first and then working, what you can just do is switch them. So you work first and then you use the social media as a reward afterwards. Or do something that maybe gives you even more reward, like being able to plan ahead so that you can like go do an activity that you love and not feel like at the last minute all you have left to do at the end of the day is just pass out. But if you switch it from avoidance behavior to reward, then when you actually reward and you relax it after working, you don't have the stress anymore of like, oh, I should be doing this thing. Because sometimes when we're procrastinating, there's a little voice in our head that's like, oh, but you really need to be doing this thing. But if you just do the thing you need to do first and reward yourself afterwards, then you've lost that stress of what you should be doing, and instead you can just reap the benefits and like celebrate what you have done. So procrastination, like I said, is a learned behavior. And if you just start practicing switching your avoidance behavior to a reward and use things like the Pomodoro method, which I'll talk to you about later, you can start to retrain your mind and retrain your habits to not procrastinate anymore. And there's a thing on here that says the marshmallow test. So there's a study that was done a while back of children, and essentially they put one marshmallow in front of a child. The researchers put the marshmallow in front of the child and said, if you wait, 10-15 minutes, I forget the amount of time, but if you wait 15 minutes and don't eat this, I'll come back and I'll give you another marshmallow. And the kids that were able to delay gratification, meaning they were able to not feel gratification in the moment, they were not feeling the pleasantness of the marshmallow in the moment, and because they waited, they were able to get a bigger reward later. So the kids who were able to delay that gratification, who were able to wait to get the second marshmallow, they ended up in life being much more successful, had higher salaries, were more successful academically than those kids who just ate the marshmallow in the moment. So if you're someone who would eat the marshmallow in the moment, I just say to you that just practice waiting and seeing how long can you wait to get that reward, so that you can reap an even bigger reward. And it's just, like I said, a learned behavior. Another thing with procrastination is understanding prioritization. So this can be really helpful in kind of understanding where you're at in terms of procrastination. So we have this table here that says urgent and not urgent on the top, and then important and not important on the left. And so in quadrant 1, this is the area of things that feel urgent, that are urgent, but are also important. So this could be like a paper due tomorrow, or a test today, or a flat tire even. These are deadlines and emergencies that in the moment are very urgent, but like I said, they're also very important. So those are things that are obviously the highest stress, while still being important. So interestingly, the quadrant 2 is similar, but a little different. So this is the quadrant that we kind of want to live in. This is the quadrant where things are still important. So it's maybe a paper due next week, or a friend's birthday that you know is coming up in a week. But at the moment, it's not urgent. You know it's coming up in the future, and you know that if you avoid it, if you don't work on it, it will become urgent. So if we work in this quadrant 2, you can start working on that paper 1 week in advance, so that by the time the deadline comes up, you have it done. Or the friend's birthday, instead of it being the birthday and you realize you haven't done anything for your friend, you can plan ahead and order that birthday present so that it arrives at her house at the right time. So like I said, quadrant 2 is where we want to live, and we live there by planning ahead. And then we have quadrant 3, which are interruptions. And these are things that are not very important, but that are urgent, that come up immediately, and we feel like we have to tend to them. So often these are things like a phone call or a text message, or someone coming up to your desk, or a meeting that doesn't necessarily align with your overall goals, or it's not a priority right now. And so these are things that feel important in the moment because they're urgent, but they're not important in the sense that they're contributing to your long-term goals. So for these, I would suggest creating like a time of day where you answer all of these messages or all of your emails, so that when you're working, you don't every time you hear an email go and read it. When you're working on your long-term goals, you stay focused and you give yourself time to just do that, and then you give yourself another time to handle those interruptions, or tell the person in your family, hey, I'm working right now, if you can please not disturb me, or same with a coworker. And then with these interruptions, you can also reschedule. So if a meeting comes up and you have something else to do, trying to reschedule. Again, it comes back to like planning ahead and planning your time so that your attention's not being pulled back and forth. So the fourth area, the fourth quadrant, is things called time wasters. And these are usually the things we procrastinate on. So it could be scrolling through social media. It could be playing video games for an extended period of time, or sort of texting your friend and just saying like, hey, what's up, without actually, having a reason to talk to them in the moment. So again, these are things that we want to notice that we're doing, and not that it's okay to have rewards and to play video games or to go on social media, but sort of plan them as rewards that you do for a short period of time, and you're not doing them with the intention of avoiding what you really need to do. So just managing your time, set, hey, I'm only going to watch one episode of TV, or I'm only going to play video games for 30 minutes, and not let it sort of spiral. So yeah. So another technique, and one I kind of mentioned earlier is called Parkinson's law. And this is essentially the rule that work will expand to fill the time allotted. So if you have 2 weeks to complete a paper, it will usually take you that 2 weeks, and you'll usually wait to the last minute to get it done. So instead of waiting till the end of the 2 weeks to start, set deadlines earlier in the week, or at the first week to get a draft done, and then the second week to get the final done, that you are hard set deadlines, and then reward yourself for getting it done early. So trying to, again, train yourself to work ahead of time, to sort of split things up, because when we see that we have 2 weeks to do something, we tend to wait till the end. But if you give yourself deadlines closer, you'll be more likely to get it done sooner. Another thing that can help with procrastination is identifying exactly what, when, and where you plan on doing something. Because when we just say like, hey, at some point this week, I need to work on writing that paper, that's a really vague goal. So instead you want to say like, specifically, what can I do? I'm gonna come back to that, but specifically, what will I do? I'm gonna read 2 articles and annotate them, and take notes. And then specifically, I'm going to make an outline for my essay. When and where? At this time on Tuesday, I'm going to sit at my desk and do it. For how long? I'll spend an hour on each article. Why am I doing it? I'm doing it because it's research that I need to be able to write my paper. It'll make writing my paper much easier, and then I'll get a good grade on it, and then I'll get a good grade in the class. I'll pass the class so I can get my degree. And then checking off whether you did it. And so when making a to-do list kind of like this, using this format, it gets you to really think about exactly what you're doing and when you're going to do it and why you're doing it, so that you can really start to visualize yourself getting it done, and then you're more likely to get it done, because you've matched your to-do list with your motivation, and you've also imagined where and when you're going to get it done, so that you can, sort of manifest it or make it actually happen, because it's not this abstract goal that you know that you need to eventually get done at some point. And so as you can see here, when you identify these things and you plan in this way, you're actually 8 times more likely to do it than if you just create a generic to-do list. So it's really important to get specific about your goals, and you can take a screenshot of this and create like an Excel spreadsheet for yourself, or write it down on a piece of paper. It can be really helpful. So moving along, I think another thing that helps a lot with procrastination is your attitude, and knowing that it all comes down to your attitude towards procrastination, and your willingness to think of your to-do list as opportunities to learn and opportunities to, take on an enjoyable challenge. So we have this quote by the founder or the pioneer of the concept of flow, which is essentially being able to be fully immersed in your work. So the quote goes, of all the virtues we can learn, no trait is more useful, more essential for survival, and more likely to improve the quality of life than the ability to transform adversity into an enjoyable challenge. So I think at the end of the day, instead of thinking of all the things we have to do as just annoying things on our to-do list, instead it's really important to try to think of them as something you can overcome, as something that you can take on to improve yourself, improve your work habits, and take the next step in your career. So like I mentioned earlier, there's a technique called the Pomodoro Technique. And this is essentially when you're working, you can, excuse me, set a timer for 25 minutes, and then you then take a 5-minute break. I'll show you these slides in a second. So you set the timer for 25 minutes, you take a 5-minute break, and then you work for another 25 minutes, 5-minute break, and you do this 4 times until you've created a 2-hour cycle. And then after the 2 hours, you take a longer break of 30 to 60 minutes. So the point of this is you're breaking your time into 25-minute segments. And this is a great amount of time because it's not so long that you start to burn out, but it's also not so little that you can actually get something done. And in these 25-minute sessions, you want to give yourself a very specific goal to work on. And you work with your undivided attention, put your phone away, don't be around people if you work better by yourself, and just work on your one task, your one goal. It could be doing 5 problems of math, or 1 problem of math if it takes 25 minutes, or looking up articles that you want to research, or starting to read, the first 10 pages of your textbook. And then, like I said, set your timer for 25 minutes. And this is good because it allows you to not have to check the clock to know if the 25 minutes are up. You can just focus, and then when you hear the alarm go off, it's time for a break. And then, like I said, you work as much as possible towards the goal. And then during the 5-minute break, or during your 5-minute break, you can do little things like getting up to stretch your legs, do a little deep breathing exercise, use the restroom, make a cup of tea. something that allows you to kind of stop thinking about your to-do list for a moment, or stop thinking about your task for a moment, kind of refresh yourself, get a new perspective, maybe review the progress you've made so far, and then get ready to work for your next 25 minutes. And then you set a new goal and repeat. And then after that 2-hour session of 4 25-5s, then you take a longer break of 30 to 60 minutes. And this is where you can do more like pleasant activities of, then you can, have lunch with a friend, or watch a YouTube video that you like, something that has a definitive end, but that feels fun and is something that you want to do. So yeah, can be very helpful. There's a ton of Pomodoro Technique like apps on the internet. There's one that's called cuckoo.team, CUCKOO.team. That one's great. There's different ones, different apps on your phone that you can look up. It can be very helpful for both procrastination and concentration. So yeah, so to finish up today's workshop, I'm just going to give you 10 ways to do it now, to kind of get going and get your work done now and not later, right? So let me just get my notes. So the first one is trying to use rational self-talk. So this is where you try to be real with yourself, try to be as objective as possible, and this is where you give like your responsible voice more attention. So this is the voice that's saying like, you really need to get this done sooner, but you can do it, and we got to set these goals. I just need you to work on it for 25 minutes. Like however you can talk to yourself or encourage yourself, but not letting your rationalizations take over or your excuses. Instead, kind of monitoring yourself and keeping track of what you need to be doing in a sort of non-harsh, non-judgmental way. And sort of along those lines, in addition to being rational and responsible and objective, you also want to be encouraging. If your biggest fear is failing or not being able to ask for help, just encourage yourself to ask for help, or to take things slow, one thing at a time, one step at a time. It'll make you more likely to want to do something if you have an encouraging voice in your mind, as opposed to like, oh no, I'm scared of doing this, I don't want to do this, I'm gonna be bad if I don't do this. So yeah, just trying to be self-compassionate. And then sort of along this line of like thoughts is avoiding catastrophizing. So sometimes when we are working towards an assignment, we tend to, see it as a big obstacle that we surmount, and then it becomes stressful. And catastrophizing is thinking that the worst will happen. If I start, it's going to be create something terrible, so I don't want to even start at all. And it's just a dangerous path to go down. So as much as possible, replacing those catastrophizing thoughts with more rational and positive self-talk. And sort of what we've been talking about is it's really important to design clear goals, specific goals, time-sensitive goals, the SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. And you can look more into that on your own time, but I highly recommend it. But essentially, you just want to give yourself specific goals that feel concrete, that have an ending, so that when you complete it, you feel that sense of accomplishment and you've taken a step towards your bigger goals. So really important to be clear with yourself so that you can kind of manage yourself. It'd be like if you were a supervisor and you just said, hey, employee, like, get this thing done, but you don't tell them how or specifically what or when or with whom they need to do that task. So you have to do the same thing with yourself. And then again, going back to that prioritization, remembering what's important to you, what needs to get done first. When we procrastinate, we often do things that are less important earlier on. So just living in that quadrant 2 of like, okay, I have this thing that I know is going to come up. Let me do a little bit of work on it now because it is a high priority, a high, thing on my to-do list. And a big thing, the best piece of advice is I have for people who procrastinate is to break down your assignments. whatever the assignment is, whether it's a programming assignment, essentially there's always the steps of sort of planning for the assignment, doing it, and then editing it. Whether it's a paper, a coding assignment, an experiment, an art project, there's always some level of planning what you're going to do, doing it, and then checking back to make sure you did it right and that it's your best work and things like that. And then another big thing that I think we sort of forget about is getting organized. So this kind of goes back to that planning stage, but if you organize your stuff in advance, when you start to work, you're more prepared and you're less likely to get distracted by, oh no, I need to go get this art supplies, or I need to contact my group member, or I need to schedule the review. And if you haven't done that organization work ahead of time, when you sit down, you'll get distracted. But if you have everything you need when you start to work, it'll be much easier to work more seamlessly. And then it's really important at the end of the day to practice committing. When you give yourself that time that you're going to do something and you sit at your desk, practicing just saying, I'm just going to do it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just my first time. I'm just going to take one small step toward completing it. And just go for it. And again, be positive, be encouraging, and don't be a perfectionist. Yeah, like I said, if you just say, I just need to get something on the page, that's commitment right there. So that can be really helpful. And then last thing, it's helpful to use like prompts or cues. And this is really helpful in general when you're trying to make a habit. So if you're trying to build a habit of making a to-do list every week, what you can do is to create a new habit, it's really good to add it to an existing old habit. So if every Sunday you meal prep, right after you meal prep, you can go make your to-do list. Or if every morning you brush your teeth, after you brush your teeth, you can then make a to-do list. And then something like cues, with if you want to do a little bit of writing every morning, for example, maybe after breakfast every morning you have a cue of, okay, I've finished my breakfast, now it's time to sit down and work. Or every morning or every day after work, if you work full-time or part-time, you have work, then you have the prompt of like, okay, I'm going to take a walk around the block, and then when I come back, that's when I start working. Using those cues can really help to like get you in the habit of starting to work as opposed to pushing it off, because you have a cue of when you want to start doing something. And lastly, reward yourself. I think this is a really underused strategy, honestly. If you reward yourself, you can get that sense of accomplishment. So I say reward yourself at every step of the way. If you just work for 25 minutes, use that 5-minute break to be like, hey, I got something done, I got started, I was afraid to do this, but I'm doing it. I'm tackling my procrastination habit, and I'm working towards my goals. You can use little words like a cup of tea or a nice drink that you like, or you could do bigger goals or rewards with like watching a movie at the end of the week, or if you finish assignment or do on a test, you take yourself out to dinner, or at the end of a semester, something like that. So it can definitely range, but I think they're really important because then you get that positive feeling of accomplishment, which makes you then want to work even more and work harder because you felt that celebration and that feeling of pride and accomplishment. Yeah. So I hope this was helpful. If you found any of this helpful, I encourage you to apply it to your own life and also to make an appointment with an academic coach. Like I mentioned, I'm just gonna go ahead and close this. Yeah, whoop, the sun's in my face, but I just want to remind you, yes, that we have that individual academic coaching. So if you want to bring any of these habits to a coach and said, hey, I heard about the Pomodoro method, but I'm having trouble applying it, could you help me work with it? So that's why we're here to help you practice applying those habits so that, again, you can tackle that procrastination habit and succeed and graduate and take this into your career. So I hope you got something out of this. And I wish you a great rest of your day. Thank you.